Hey, this is Jeff Walker, and we're back with a second segment with Doug Sopha, probably one of the most influential guys in dirt racing and also asphalt racing in the Southeast. And to my left on this episode is Mike Luna and Dusty. And to my right, Doug's right, is Randall Davis. I got your name this time, Randall.
Hey, it's easy to.
He remembered
lots
you
of
this
names.
time.
I remembered you. I seem to, when I get a little bit older, things like that seem to be
They tell
happening
me
to
that,
me.
that happens.
Yeah.
You know, Doug was talking about the old days of racing and how much racing has changed and everything, and you saw it through a big portion of the change, and now it's going through another change, you know.
What I can see about it now, I'm not around it, but that much, but it is changed again, you know. It is just,
It's super controlled now.
and it's super expensive now.
It's that too.
You know, I always wanted to ask you this. I don't know, back when Hoosier came into NASCAR,
Yes.
were you in on that
Oh,
deal
yeah.
also? Okay.
Yeah, I started out doing which is now whatever the series is. It was a Busch series then. It's Xfinity
Yeah, I
now.
believe it is.
I serviced that. And, you know, we were okay, doing all right. And I finally told Bob Newton, I said, I'm going to be as good to you, because we were busy. I mean, we were doing things that were making money. And going to all these Busch races wasn't making any money because we didn't have but 2 or 3 cars, and was trying to win races and do that. And we did okay. But I told him after the first year, I said, Bob, I'm going to be as good to you as you was me. I'm going to give this back to you. I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. And then he graduated right on to Cup the next year.
Yeah.
They still kept doing and they did all of that in-house then. And so I went to some of the races with them, but I wasn't involved with it at that point. They just did everything in-house.
Doug, I've got to ask you one thing. I know this guy, Mike Luna. He became a real prominent racer.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand you had something to do with getting him started racing. Maybe probably his first trips around the racetrack, you showed him how to do it.
Maybe. I don't know. That's been a long time ago. Mike's a lot younger than I am. So.
Well, I've actually heard that he started racing sitting in your lap.
Well, he could have done that. Now, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a good car then, so, you know, he learned what it was to do it right, you know.
And you was letting him drive that car
Yeah.
sitting in your lap.
He would.
Yeah. Might
and
as
when-
well.
when
He
they
could do as
turn it-
good a job as I could.
How old were you then, Mike?
Oh, gosh, probably 12, 13.
Maybe 12,
something, 12. You know, I could never reach the pedals,
No.
you know.
But
and,
That way you could control how fast he
Yeah.
could drive.
Yeah.
I used the gas and the brakes.
Doug could spin it around there, you know, like when they turned them around. They used to pack the track backwards. And Doug could spin one around perfect, and he'd let me, on the gas and the brake.
I remember that now. I've
And
forgotten all
as
about
my
that.
first laps, you know, was sitting in Doug's laps. He's
I'm responsible for getting him the bug.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Doug has been responsible for lots of steps in our sport, and I just had to share that story with people out there. It's little things like that too, and Mike turned in to be a great driver.
He wasn't bad, was he?
He wasn't bad at all.
Doug was always, you know, I looked up to him just like you guys too. You know, that's all I ever wanted to do was drive a race car. And Doug, he, you know, it's pretty big of him to even fool with somebody sitting in their lap.
Well, that was the. You know, maybe I was needing a friend.
But I couldn't wait till Saturday night to go out and pack a track.
That's the way we all were. We couldn't wait till Saturday night.
Hey, that's something that has changed with racing. It was I refer to it sometimes as a rolling carnival, but we were all good friends back then, and there wasn't anything we wouldn't do to help each
No.
other. We'd compete hard. I mean, whatever it took, or almost anything it took to win, we'd do it. But we'd get right out and help each other if they
Fix
needed
their
help
car,
getting
do
home or
anything you
help
wanted to
next
do.
week. We were friendly rivals, I guess. We competed hard, but actually were good friends with each
Yeah,
other.
it
And,
worked out
Actually, too, back then, we spent more time with each other than we did family.
by far.
I was always a big fan of Doug and pulled for him, always.
Doug was just a likable guy to be around at the racetrack.
Really?
Yes, you were. And there was always.
Your memory's leaving you, and
I just remember what I want to. But Doug was a colorful character. And
He was.
You were liked, Doug. There was always a story with Doug. He always had something going on at the racetrack. So wherever Doug was at, there was some
there
interest.
was some controversy. or something.
I barely remember it, but I think somebody throwed a fake snake on Doug, and he
Oh,
jumped
yeah.
off the car hauler
Oh,
and
yeah.
cut his hand real bad and couldn't even race it. And
Yeah.
that made me so mad.
I forget who done that. Might have been Fat Cat. I don't remember. It's somebody. I hate snakes.
I do too.
Huh?
I
Fat
do
Cat,
too.
think.
Oh, I think it might have been Jerry Johnson.
It could have been. I don't know.
One of them two.
I think it was Fat Cat. that
It
done
could have been.
Fat Cat was a good candidate.
But
We'll blame it on
I
him.
will blame it on him.
Doug cut your hand, didn't he?
Oh,
Pretty
yeah.
bad.
Yeah. It scared me to death.
Didn't even get a race that night.
Doug, through your racing career, there's usually something, a race in particular that you've won, or maybe you almost won, that really stands out.
Not really. I remember the bad parts of the bad races I had more than anything. I mean, I remember when we had that Nova, and I was thought I was unbeaten. I mean, I could win it all, So BK and I don't know who all, we loaded up and went to East Alabama. They have a race down there at the end of the year every year. And Charlie Hughes was he was driving one of the Gigolo cars then. And I just heard of Charlie Hughes, And we were down there, and I was going down the straightaway. We was hot lapping. And I looked in my mirror, and Charlie was coming. I think I was almost in turn one, and he was just coming off of 4. And he passed me before I got through 1 good. I told BK, I said, we might as well go back home.
And how did that turn out?
We came back home.
I know Bill Fry.
Yeah.
I know you, Bill Fry. And I heard him say that when he got ready to quit, that him and Johnny Verdon
Yeah.
were maybe at Batesville or somewhere. And he had a great race car, he said. And he said, I'm just not willing to go down there in that corner like these other boys are doing. He said, I'm not willing to do it. The car will do it, but I'm not willing to do it. And said, Verdon said, I noticed that. And he said, what are we going to do about it? He said, well, I'm going to start in the B, and I'm going to pass a couple of cars, and we're going to eat some barbecue and go home. Was there a time when you decided, was that the time when you decided to step away from the driving? Something similar to that?
No,
or?
I had some better cars after that. Came the
The Howe car.
the Howe car. Well, came the car that Buddy Graham drove, and then the Howe car, and I sold a few Howe cars and Dillon cars. But really, what made me step away totally was just the tire business overtook anything I could do. I remember the last race, and I knew nothing about this stuff. I had the Howe car and was running at Bull's Gap on a Sunday afternoon. And we had built a tire that was very similar to an asphalt tire, but we softened up the sidewall. It's called a 1270. And on a black racetrack, this thing was dynamite. We'd really taken over the Carolinas and places with it. And so we were up there, and I never will forget it. I was running third. Larry Moore or Freddie Smith won. They was both in front of me. And I was running third, and I was pushing. The racetrack got tight. I didn't know what it was to have a tight race car. I didn't know. I got to running in the holes to break the car loose to go, to turn it. and I ended up running third. And that was about the last race that I ended up selling the Hal car, not too long after that, because my business was going so big, and we were building some Hal cars then.
Like I talked about before, you've been involved with almost all the big
phases of
name,
it, yeah.
plus all the big name guys. But I know you had a special relationship with Ronnie Johnson.
Yeah,
and,
Ronnie and
Jeff
I,
Purvis.
Yeah, Jeff and I went through a lot of good years together. And yeah, it was all good. We all traveled together. I never will forget Moore. We went to Newport the next night after Bull's Gap to run a race over there. Moore said, I ain't helping you no more.
Did you run a full season in DRA?
No. I just that wasn't even an NDRA race. It was just a Sunday afternoon race at Bull's Gap. And I'm sure we'd been someplace racing, and Dave Hensley was helping me take care of the car. We already had it in Knoxville. And we went up there, and then we ran the next night at Newport, I think. And that's about the last time I remember racing.
What made you decide that you wanted to get in the racetrack business?
Well, it was just something we were in the business, and I knew so many people. And then 411 became available. And
Was that the first racetrack?
yeah, that's the first racetrack. Well, no, maybe Florence Motor Speedway was the first one. No, 411 was probably the first and the first time. Bob Wright, whatever, that built a Tommy.
Martin.
Bob Martin. He came to me and we bought 411. Well, I bought 411, but he was supposed to help buy him, but he never did. And he was running, and I just stayed out of it. And, it was doing good. The little racetrack was doing good. This was the first start, and put it back. It'd been years since it'd been raced. And we never had any money to split up. So I went over there one night, and we had a crowd that was crazy, but we didn't have much money left. So I put a counter on the gate, a boy that worked for me. And that was the demise of me and Bob Martin's relationship, because it wasn't good after that. It was making money, but he wasn't sharing it with his partner.
And then you went on to Crossville.
Yeah, and then we went from there to Crossville. I guess, after 411, I fixed 411, ran it for a while, then NDRA had wound down, and Robert even came down there and helped me promote 411 for a little while. And then somewhere in the time, I guess somewhere along that line I paid 411. And then I got a chance to buy Crossville. And then I took Buddy in as a partner up there, and he kind of ran the thing. They moved down there and took care of it. But then it just escalated from there, a racetrack come available, and we'll buy it,
Well, you built the I-40 racetrack.
Yeah, I built that
next
one
to
at
Atomic.
I-40, and then we did
I-75.
and I-75, and had them both basically at the same time. And that was, I guess, Tennessee Motor Speedway was gone then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't gone, but we had gotten
Yeah.
out of it. And that is a racetrack that I wish I never saw. It was a night, it was all good, but I lost friends over that racetrack and I wasn't even involved in it, more or less. I told him and BK and Ed, I said, y'all do whatever you want to, I'll be a partner in it, but just as long as it's not costing me money. And I may never show up, and I'd show up every once in a while, but not much. And then when it started losing money, then I said, well, let's just close it. So people started getting mad, so.
I loved that place, so it was special.
Yeah, it was. You
Special
did well
place,
over there
yeah.
too.
Well, you've been into the promotion business a lot, Doug. You've seen them do really well, and you've seen them fade away. What usually causes a track to start fading away? are getting in trouble, what are the signs of a track as you would see it getting in trouble?
Not running it like a business. Every racetrack I ever had, we ran it like a business, and it's gonna make money. You know, we'd adjust the purses to what we could do. It's changed a little bit now, but racetracks before, somebody getting a racetrack and they'd be a racer. Well, I'm gonna do the greatest thing in the world. I'm gonna pay everybody big money and this, that, and the other. That was the demise of both racetracks. I can just go down the list of them, you know, but we always ran it like a business, and and Tennessee Motor Speedway did great for years, 3 years, and I told them when it started, I said, 3 years, you got to start adjusting. Time, you got to change something, you know, and so.
Racetracks are a business.
Yep, they're a full-time business, you know, and that's what people don't, and I think it's gotten more so now that they're investing so much money in them now that they're either losing a lot of money or they have to run it like a business.
And there's so much involved
Yes.
with the community and
A lot of work.
everything around the racetrack. It can make or ruin a community,
Mm-hmm.
even or a town, I probably ought to say, because it's a big source of revenue if it's going good, running right. It's a big loss when it's not running good or goes out.
Well, and
busy.
racing, even people going, it goes in cycles.
Yes.
It's probably like, I've probably seen, well, everybody sitting here has probably seen it cycle 4 or 5 times, I'd say.
Yeah.
The economy has a lot.
Yeah,
to do
it
there.
just goes in.
And we always tried to keep it a weekly show. Never paid, everybody'd always talk about me for not paying enough money. But I'd pay a fair purse, and we kept it cheap for the spectators. And that was the key, and 411 was a good example. Every time I would update that racetrack, I'd have less people come the next year. And they'd say, he's making it too nice for us.
Well, you've got to have a show where
Yes.
people can afford to
Yes.
come and see, though. If you get it where the average guy with a couple of kids can't afford to come, you start seeing a track get in trouble then.
And I guess that's why a lot of the tracks now are just running big races. And I never could see that because the purses are so high. There can't be much money left at the end of the night, you know.
If you're putting on a fair show, people will come and see it
Yeah.
because racing becomes, even if you're a fan, it becomes
Yeah.
an addiction. You just have to be there.
That Duck River last night, they had a 20,000 to win late model show there.
Yeah.
One night.
First time, the place was packed. But I heard somebody complaining, of course, about how much it cost to get in and stuff.
Yeah, they
And,
probably charge him $40 or
I
something.
think it charged 50. but
50.
yeah, I
To
think
get in
so.
the stands?
I don't know how much it was
General?
in the stands, but
And
I
I don't
the
see,
pits was
And
50.
that's dangerous.
and
Yeah.
they'll come once a year,
Yeah.
maybe, and pay that. But the Duck River's a good example. That's been through 3 or 4 hands, and somebody come in there gonna pay the big bucks, and they go away. I've watched them through the years, and most of them has settled down now to the point that either somebody owns a racetrack that can afford to own it, and they are okay with losing so much money a year.
it's hard to run a
That's
weekly
not
show
business
anymore.
like either.
You can't, no.
What it costs to run the race cars is astronomical, so the purse doesn't kind of mesh with
No, it doesn't.
what
And
it
you
costs to
never
run
could,
the
the
cars.
purse never could.
Right.
If somebody told me years ago that you had to, I didn't even know what a race paid, Well, BK used to just pay us what he wanted to pay us anyway. Oh, my, if I won, it paid less, but it was funny.
What do you think about this newest? I know you kind of alluded to earlier about all the tire changes, Now, the tires are going through a different change now.
They're
They've
going
come out
through
with
a-
all this new tire for the series race, like the Lucas and the World of
Yeah.
Outlaws. What do you think about that?
What's happened with Hoosier is, of course, now the family doesn't run it anymore. All the family's gone. General Tire bought it, Continental General. And you know, they have invested in the series like Lucas and World of Outlaws, and they're hoping that all the racetracks follow. And they do, mostly. But, you know, believe it or not, American Racer now has a good bit of the short track weekly business. 8-inch stuff down, track tire rules on, I know in Florida, I used to fight to have all the racetracks down there. And Hoosier only has 2 tracks left in Florida. Americans got the rest of them, the Invernesses and the Auburndales, and obviously Hoosier's got Pensacola and the New Smyrna, the 2 biggest ones there. But there's a ton of tires to be sold at the others too. And that's what's happened. And Hoosier's selling all they can build, so why not? And people are complaining a little bit. I hear complaints, but
They're only doing 4 compounds, I think. Isn't
Yeah.
that right?
But
And
they're basically compounds that has been around, they've had for years. They've just changed them to 1, 2, 3.
Well, the Cup cars are going through a lot of tire problems this year,
Yeah.
too. There's been more tire problems this year than I remember seeing in a long time with the Cup cars.
Well, the bigger wheel and tire made a lot of difference, and they can't run interliners in them anymore. So all of that's changed, you know. But yeah, everybody's having their issues with tires, and like I say, American and Hoosier both are selling all they can build. So if what can it, you know, last year it got terrible trying to get tires, everybody said.
does American have the engineers like
No,
Hoosier?
no. They've got one. American has always been a company that made me pull my hair out years ago when it was McQuarrie. They could just come up with a truck tire rubber, and it would wear us out. I mean, something like you remember it back from the days like a Zero McQuarrie. And GF1 or maybe later years, I don't remember what the numbers went to. But we were at Volusia County one time, and they were killing us down there. And I had about all the good cars. And I said, we got to do something. I called back the plant, and Lou, who had come from American, McQuarrie then, maybe it's American, and he said, oh, I know what that rubber is. I said, well, build me some tires now. They built them, flew them down there the next day, and we went to the front again, you know. But it was just an old truck rubber tire. And no, they do not have the engineers. They're pretty well doing the same thing, excuse me, that they've done for years. They got an antiquated plant up there, nothing in comparison to Hoosier. But they still put out a decent product, and the price is cheaper. And I know Ray Cook, and somebody is the distributor down here now, and I think he's selling all the tires he can get.
Well, the thing I'm really proud Doug is sharing with us today is this evolution of the tires and stuff, because the fans never hear about all of this going on behind the scenes. They see what happens at the racetrack, but it's a 7-day, 24-hour-a-day struggle to put those cars out there.
There's a lot of layers to it.
There's a lot of layers.
And to share this, I'm proud Doug's doing this.
And we
today.
tested, and, you know, engineers will build stuff. And we did a lot more on asphalt, the testing, than we actually had to do on dirt. You were better off on dirt to try to just do your testing while the race was going on. That's you could never get the racetrack where you need it, where asphalt is pretty consistent. But we tested all the time. And
What do you think about the current state of racing, late model racing, asphalt racing?
I think it's all, well, racetracks are going away. That's the number one thing. Racetracks is getting so expensive. I was told that, you know, they're wanting $3 or $4 million for Volunteer Speedway. You know, and Herman Goddard was talking back a couple years ago, him and two or three people went together and bought that thing for $400,000, you know, and we thought that was high then. But, and, you know, racetracks, you know, look at Tennessee Motor Speedway over there, you know, look, there's some big building over there now, you know, it's gone.
Is Putnam County Speedway in Florida, is it still running?
I don't know where it is or not.
It was a really good,
A
dirt track.
little track up
Yeah.
above Volusia County.
They done
Right, it
Speed
was a-
Week there. I went there during
Several
Speed
years
Week one
ago,
year. Yeah.
but I don't think it's racing anymore.
I
was
really
in behind
enjoyed
somebody's
the
house.
races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Volusia County, I enjoy it
Yeah.
a lot too. They actually had a paved track and a dirt
Yeah.
track at one time.
Yeah, I was involved with that a lot.
When I went to Volusia, a lot of times I'd go to the pits and stand on Doug's trailer.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
Well, I was like Mike. I grew up kind of watching every move that all these guys made, like Don Hobbs and
The thing that makes me
Doug
feel slow,
Sopha.
I knew both of you as kids.
Yeah,
grew up
I
watching
did
them
too.
all.
That's making
That
me
was
feel
making
old.
me really feel old.
But racing's been good to you, man.
Oh, yeah, it's been great for me. It was, you know, I just decided I wanted to get out of it. You know, I said I wanted to retire when I was 50, which I didn't retire, but I did sell the tire company out when I was 50.
Racing will probably teach a guy more about life than anything. You can be king one week, but that only lasts just till the next
It's a
weekend.
very humbling experience,
And,
yeah.
The next weekend, you can be nobody.
That's
So
exactly
it
right.
teaches you not to get too big for your pants.
But I also can tell you this, that families that grew up around racing, I don't know many of them that's had drug problems and stuff.
You don't have time for
Yeah,
anything
no,
else.
Nor
you know,
money.
it was very few of them, you know, and they grew up to be good kids. I mean, look at Jeff and Mike, what little we can say about them, you know?
I even like Mike.
You got any closing comments, Randall?
I feel real fortunate to have Doug here. I've raced with him, spent a lot of Saturday nights with him, always enjoyed it. Can't say that I was ever mad at Doug Sopha 1 minute at the racetracks, and you can't say that about a lot of people. Well, maybe once. But Doug, I've enjoyed having you, and one thing about this podcast, I'd like to say, it's allowed some of us to be reunited with old friends. It's allowed us to put faces with some names out there. You hear names brought up that you haven't, even today, that you haven't heard in so long, that contributed so much. And people like Doug Sopha contributed so much that you didn't hear about, that made the sport what it is today. He literally lived with the evolution of Hoosier Tire.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get that, and I'm proud, Doug. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's you know, there's not a lot of Doug Sophas around that was involved in that much of racing, and I mean the tires are a big part of it.
And you gotta blame Mike. He was relentless. He said, "You're coming." I said, "I don't like to do stuff like that, Mike." He said, "You're coming."
Well, I got to say this: when he told me you were coming, I said, "I'm going to be there one way or other."
No, I'm thankful you come, Doug.
Just glad to be here. I really enjoyed it.
And Doug, when things get, if we ever get laxed or anything, or things are dying down a little, you've got to come back.
I will.
Because that'll build a new fire. And
I've enjoyed
let me
it.
tell you, I know you enough that this is only a tip of the
Oh,
stories
it's
that's
a
out
small
there.
Yeah.
drop of it, but yeah, and I've really enjoyed it. I didn't think I would enjoy it. Y'all have got me talking for some reason. I've got to tell them.
I've known you had a problem with talking
Yeah, I
throughout
have.
life.
We were going asphalt racing at 411 and was joining NASCAR, and we had all the NASCAR people up there and had them at the Hilton. And I hate to get up in front of people and talk. And I said, I want to introduce, we're going to do this, and here, I'm turning it over to Roby Helms. And I sat back down.
Well, you, Don Hobbs, B.K. Luna, Earl Lawrence, those guys, Paul Walker's, was all great parts of racing as it was in its
guaranteed.
infancy. And some of it was a little before me, but I was fortunate enough to grow up with lot of it and share some of the times with you, and I'm blessed to have had those times.
Like I said, it was a pleasure always being around Doug, and it took somebody like him, like I said before, with his personality and his drive and stuff to do all the things that he's done. And I'll be honest, I don't think he's actually realizes what an influence and that he's been on racing in the whole Southeast.
He's been a promoter.
Humble.
He's been a racer, and being the racer first, you can look at things a lot different. You see things a lot different when you've been strapped in and sat behind the wheel.
Yes, you do.
Than you do if you've never done it. You have a different perspective on racing when you've done it. And Doug, I think, well, I know he has he used that. When he made decisions, he used a lot of it from the racer's point of view in the promotion business. He knew the audience, the driver, everything that was dependent on each other. You couldn't have one without the other. And he still got, listening to him today, he still got that sentiment. And maybe we need to get him back in the promotion business again. I know a track that may be available before long, anyway.
If there's nothing else, then we'll conclude this episode of Southern Dirt Motorsports Podcast, and we ask that you like and subscribe. It's what keeps everything rolling. Appreciate it.
And
See you
Doug,
next time.
thanks again for being here.
Thank y'all for having me.